What's going on, guys? Come on in, make yourselves at home. I promise I won't bite too hard. And we've got a great show in store for you today. And if you are new to this, we do a show called Jimmy Rants. So my name's Jimmy Moore. I do this show on Instagram Live. I do simulcast also on Facebook Live so that all my friends there can see what we're doing here, all the fun. But the show is on Instagram Live. Some people on YouTube also say, why is it vertical? Can't you turn the camera sideways? And I find that it works better when you do the vertical rather than the horizontal view. So if you're watching this on YouTube, there is a reason why it's a little rectangular in the middle and there's black on the side. So don't have a hissy fit about that. All right, so JimmyRants.com is the website if you want to check out any of the past episodes. We also do put up all the videos on YouTube. So if you do a keyword Jimmy Rants over on YouTube, you'll find all the past episodes that way there. So, and by the way, if you want to follow me on Instagram and watch my lives in real time, I am at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVIN LOWCARBMAN. And I am over here on Instagram, and we do go live definitely once a day. Pretty much that's been my jam, doing 11 a.m. Eastern time. And then if I'm able to, because of my schedule, I will also do a second one at 5 p.m. And we will have one at 5 p.m. for you guys Eastern time here today for Jimmy Rants. But today's Jimmy Rants is all an important story I just had to make sure you guys knew about, because there's a lot of talk about obesity. A lot of talk for many years we've heard about obesity. And the reasons why the dietary guidelines originally came out in 1980 was, well, we need to stem the effects of the obesity epidemic. So they came up with the guidelines to try to stem that. And guess what? It ain't been stemmed. In fact, new statistics are showing us that despite all of our best efforts to educate people, despite all of the things that we just know are true about dealing with this issue, obesity rates just keep getting worse and worse and worse. I remember when I first started blogging, it was 2005 when I started the Livin' La Vida Low Carb blog. So yeah, I've been out here a long time, watching a whole lot of things for a lot of years. And they have always tried to deal with the obesity crisis. They always set these target goals. They always say, oh, we need to, by the year blankety blank, we need to have obesity rates down to blankety blank. And it's one thing to say that's your goal. It's a totally another thing to say how you get to that goal. And the how-to is the big question du jour that we're going to talk about here today. But what I want to read to you is a story. World Obesity Day was yesterday, I believe it was. And the quote in the headline says, all countries significantly off track to meet the 2025 World Health Organization targets on obesity. We're not surprised, are we? Like, they're making this seem like this is breaking news. But if you watch people, you know exactly why obesity continues to be this epidemic. But let's read this story. Obesity organizations around the world are coming together, and they did, on March the 4th. They marked World Obesity Day. Okay, so March 4th, so it was several days ago, was World Obesity Day. They call for more comprehensive solutions, treatment, and shared accountability for addressing the global epidemic that is obesity. Comprehensive solutions. Do you feel like we have available to us comprehensive solutions that are being offered up to people to help deal with their obesity? I think what we have is disjointed solutions. So you've got one group of people that are saying, oh, if you want to lose weight and get healthy, you need to eat a mostly plant-based diet. There is that group of people out there. You have another group of people that say, if you want to lose weight and restore your health, just eat meat. The carnivore people. You have another group of people that say, well, no. If you want to lose weight and you want to get your body to burn fat, then you need to eat the diet that will put your body into fat burning mode, and that diet is keto. Do you see that we have disjointed solutions and not comprehensive ones? A comprehensive solution, in my opinion, would be not a one-size-fits-all diet, but a recommendation from the powers that be it your doctors, be it nutritionists and dietitians, be it the government. They need to be offering a variety of ways for people to try. That, to me, would be a comprehensive solution. But guys, that's never been tried. We still live with monolithic thinking as it relates to how we deal with obesity. And we also put all the onus on food. I very rarely hear anybody talk about all the non-food related reasons why you still have weight on your body. And we don't want to talk about the chemical crap storm that is most of the environmental cleaning supplies and things that we have in our houses that are probably obesogens. We don't want to talk about the role that stress is playing, and the stress right now over this coronavirus, oh my God. Like, the stress about this risk of something that's highly unlikely to ever bother you is probably causing more health problems than the coronavirus ever will. So, people are stressed about life, about family issues, about stuff in their life. And as I've been talking about lately, childhood trauma and adult trauma, things that are happening in your life that significantly shake you up, let's not devalue what those things are doing to your weight and your health as well. So if you want to talk about comprehensive solutions, you've got to look at not just diet, not just one diet, but a multiplicity of diets. Not just looking at diet, but also looking at all these lifestyle factors, helping people find ways to cope. They haven't done that. So it's good they're calling for comprehensive solutions, but who is going to wear the big boy pants and step up to the plate and actually make it happen? I ain't holding my breath. Which is why you got people like Jimmy Moore, who's just a layperson, out here articulating ideas, trying to encourage people and help them, because the powers that be have let us down. And if you've been let down, that's probably why you're here, right? Treatment. Once again, we have a one-size-fits-all treatment. There's a lot of doctors. In fact, right before I came on the air, this lady wrote me on Instagram, and she said, my doctor looked at my weight and said, you need to be on medication and come back and see me in 1 year. So instead of saying what's going on in your life, let's see your stress levels, let's see things that are going on, let's see what your diet looks like, let's see, didn't give a rip. All he said was, take this one or two pills, come back and see me in a year, and I hope you lose weight. Can I just be honest? The obesity epidemic is not going to be solved by a friggin' pill. It's going to be solved when we finally get serious about what we're doing that might be causing it, and looking at all the factors that are involved in why you have weight on your body. Let's stop pretending like there's one solution to all of this. Let's stop pretending like obesity is just a diet issue. Are you getting me? Are you feeling me here today? The World Health Organization is worried and upset that the target obesity rates are off track. No kidding! We know why they're off track. And we're going to get into that here in a minute. And then the last one, shared accountability. So doctors already blame their patients when they don't lose weight. Well, you're not cutting calories enough. You're not cutting fat grams enough. You're not exercising on the treadmill enough. Do more, lower. We've all done that, guys. We've all been shamed by a doctor into doing things that are extraordinarily bad for us. And the doctor thinks it's so wonderful that you try to get your calories down to 1,000. The doctor thinks it's so wonderful that you eliminate the fat in your diet, you eat lots of healthy whole grains. The doctor thinks it's so wonderful that you step on a treadmill and you walk for 2 hours a day. All in their minds, healthy habits. All in their minds, part of this shared accountability. Well, if I give you this instruction and you follow it to a T, you will lose weight. Maybe. Will you be able to sustain that weight? Will you be able to feel good in the midst of it? I can tell you in 1999, I went on a no-fat diet. It was in response to my brother Kevin having 3 heart attacks at the age of 32. I basically ate a diet for 9 months of absolutely no fat at all, and minimal, under 10 grams a day. And I remember being incredibly miserable the whole time. I remember saying, oh my God, if I have to eat one more day of this kind of food. Rice cakes. You guys remember those stupid flavored rice cakes? And here was the funny part for me now in hindsight looking at this. Coca-Cola had no fat. I drink all the Coke I wanted. Twizzlers had these little stringy things, and I'd wrap them around my finger and stick them in my mouth. There was no fat in those. A naturally fat-free food. So if I'm following the advice of a doctor who's telling me, well, just cut your fat and your calories and exercise and walk, I was doing that. Did I lose weight? You bet I did. Could I sustain that? And that's not in here anywhere about, okay, it's one thing to help people have comprehensive solutions, treatment, and shared accountability. But are we looking at this from the long-term view? I would argue most of the obesity solutions offered up by medical professionals, nutritionists and dietitians, and the government are all temporary solutions to a permanent problem. And until we come up with permanent, comprehensive solutions, we will never, ever move forward with seeing obesity rates fall. All right, let's get to the crux of the story here. Obesity is a chronic relapsing disease. All right. I have for the longest time had a tough time calling obesity a disease. And I've had many of my doctor friends have said, no. We want it to be called a disease because we need a code that we can put in there that lets us get insurance to pay for treating it. Like a lot of my keto doctor friends are like, no, don't discourage them from calling it a disease, because if we get it identified as a disease, then we can code it and we can treat them with keto, and I get reimbursed rather than the patient having to have certain tests run, like an A1C, a fasting insulin, and those kinds of things that you would normally run within the context of treating obesity as a disease. You want to run those, and then you want insurance to cover it. If he doesn't have a code, he or she doesn't have a code to put in as the doctor, then the patient has to pay it all out of pocket. So I've struggled with that because I don't think obesity in and of itself is the disease, but I do think it's a part of the disease process. You get diseased, insulin resistance primarily, metabolic syndrome, and other actual diseases, then obesity usually follows. Very rarely do you see obesity happen with no causal factor from another condition making it happen. Okay, so let's assume it's a disease. Obesity is a chronic relapsing disease affecting a rapidly increasing number of people worldwide. Guys, this isn't just America. We like to think here in America, because of our culture, that we have all of this stuff in our culture that makes us more prone to obesity. Well, what you don't know is the food companies, especially the junk food companies, have infiltrated a lot of poor countries. I remember when I went to South Africa. I spoke at Cape Town, South Africa in 2015, shared the stage with all the biggest names in the low-carb ketogenic community. It's where I met Dr. Jason Fung for the first time, Dr. Eric Westman, Professor Tim Noakes, a bunch of us were there. And I remember when they took us around to go look at like the community in Cape Town. There's one part of Cape Town that's just as gorgeous, it's all the scenic views you've seen, but then you get into the slum part of Cape Town, and you see these huge, long fences that all have the Coca-Cola logo on it. And it goes for miles upon miles. And I remember asking Professor Noakes and other people there locally, what's going on there? Oh, well, they wanted to have their communities built back up because they were so impoverished. And so Coca-Cola said, oh yeah, we'll do that if you'll put our logo everywhere. And if you'll sell Coca-Cola in all the stores all along that way. And that's what they did. So they compromised. And guys, that happens over and over and over again with a lot of the countries that are seeing obesity rates get worse. I remember in The Magic Pill, my buddy Chef Pete Evans, who helped with that film and was the main personality on screen, he talked about one community there in Australia that is the fattest, most obese country or region in the whole world. And it's Aboriginal people. They were never exposed to Coca-Cola and junk food in their traditional culture. It wasn't until the westernized influence brought that stuff in there. And again, all under the auspices of, we're going to help your community economically in exchange for you putting up our logo all over your community. And they're pimping themselves out. You can't blame them, I suppose, but it's also leading to their demise. Obesity rates getting worse. All right, let's look at the report. A new report published by the World Obesity Federation shines a light on the rise in obesity levels around the world, and it highlights that all countries are worryingly off track to meet the 2025 global targets to which they have committed, and it's just 5 more years to go, and they're nowhere near reaching those goals. By 2025, global obesity prevalence is predicted to reach 18% in men and beyond 21% in women, with many countries experiencing a lot higher levels than that. 5 of the countries, including the United States, China, Brazil, India, and Russia, account for 1/3 of all cases of obesity in adults globally. Well, that doesn't surprise me. U.S. is 320 million people. China was at 1 billion people there. Brazil's a big population. India, huge population. Russia. So that doesn't surprise me that those 5 countries comprise 1/3 of all the obesity people. But this is not surprising, guys. You want to know why obesity keeps getting worse and worse and worse, despite our best efforts to stem it by making nonsensical goals like this. We haven't addressed the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of the problem is much deeper than calories. It's why you don't hear me harp on majorly calories. Now, calories do have a role, because if you way overconsume them, you can get bigger and bigger. But that's not the big issue here. What we're not looking at is, how is what you're eating impacting your hormones? Why do we never have anybody talk about hormonal health as it relates to the foods we eat and its impact on our weight? Because if you control insulin, if you control ghrelin, if you control all of these factors within your hormonal health, and there's a ton of them in your body, one gets out of kilter, it messes with all the other ones, and usually the one that's kind of the master hormone, leptin's another one of them. The master hormone is insulin. So we need to be looking at what is stoking insulin. And insulin is a fat-storing hormone. Why is it surprising to us that obesity rates are getting worse when all we're doing, for the most part, is stoking insulin? And what stokes insulin? Gee, I wonder, what's the keto guy going to say? Stokes insulin. Yes, it's carbohydrates, but it's a lot more than just carbohydrates. The moment we think our higher insulin levels, which leads to higher obesity rates, is only about carbohydrates, we're in for a big surprise. It's not just carbohydrates that raise insulin. It could be some artificial sweeteners. Did you know that there are many artificial sweeteners that can raise your blood glucose and insulin levels? Yeah. All to get you off sugar but then they have this effect. If you read my book that I wrote with Dr. Adam Nally, Doc Muscles here on Instagram, it's called The Keto Cure. We have a whole chapter just on sweeteners and which ones raise your insulin, which ones raise your blood sugar, and which ones to totally avoid and which ones to use. And a lot of them, you guys, they may not raise blood sugar, but they'll raise insulin. And high insulin levels will not allow your body to release stored body fat, and thus you remain obese. So you see how it's all related, that the elephant in the room of what they're not talking about is we're not controlling our hormones, and specifically insulin. Wouldn't it be cool if we could have that discussion? You know when I think this is going to come on the table, and it might be a few years, when we're able to test our blood insulin levels at home. Right now, all you can do is test blood sugar levels, and there's a lot of different devices out there. Blood ketone levels, if you're trying to be in ketosis and see if you're burning fat for fuel. By the way, burning fat for fuel within the context of ketosis does not mean burning stored body fat. Okay? Because you can have a very fatty meal, and that fatty meal in and of itself will create ketones. You could drink ketones in the form of ketone esters or exogenous ketones. You could be fasting. There's any number of ways you can make ketones in the body. But that doesn't mean that fat burning is necessarily just your stored body fat. So let's be clear about that. I know there's a lot of confusion online. Well, I thought ketosis was a fat burning. It is, but don't automatically assume that means your body fat's just going to just pour off of you, because there's so many factors keeping it on your body. In fact, I'm going to probably do a Jimmy Rants at some point explaining the good that having weight on the body is, because there are a lot of reasons why weight on your body is providing you a positive benefit. Obviously, the ultimate goal is to not have it there, but in the meantime, not seeing it as a grotesque thing, but seeing it as a look what your body is doing amazingly to keep you healthy because of that weight. So stay tuned. We'll do that one soon. Once seen as a health concern in high-income countries only, talking about obesity, the greatest rise and highest numbers of obesity are now seen in the low and middle income countries. Countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Bangladesh are experiencing some of the most rapid rises in obesity. In many of these countries, undernutrition still prevails, so they're usually eating what they can eat. And people often kind of mock me as a keto advocate. Well, if everybody in the whole world ate meat, there's not enough meat to go around, so they have to subside on rice. So what do you do about these countries that all they're eating is rice and beans and just trying to get by? Look, I'm a realist. I am the man of real. I'm a realist when it comes to these things. If you're in an impoverished country, you do what you can to survive. Like, let's stop pretending like our first world problems of trying to figure out our macronutrient ratio is a big deal. No, if you're in an impoverished country, please, please, please eat whatever you can to survive. But people aren't getting fat on rice and beans in these countries where that's all they're eating. They're malnourished. I will give them that. And then if they do have an influx of junk food into their culture, what else do you think is going to happen to their weight and their health? It's going to get bad. And that's what we're seeing in these countries. They are now experiencing the double burden of malnutrition. So not only are they getting a lack of nutrients in their diet, they're now getting a lot of junk food that's not giving them anything, but it is stoking that insulin again. There it rears its ugly head, and now they're becoming fat and sick. Why are we surprised? Why does WHO pretend like they don't know what's going on? Yeah, we do. We know exactly what's going on. The Pacific Islands and Middle East experience particularly high prevalence of obesity, affecting up to 2/3 of adults in those countries. Not a surprise. Obesity, if it's left untreated, the consequences will likely escalate. This includes an increased risk of non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, and some cancers. And that also puts the other WHO targets of these things in jeopardy as well. Here's the thing they don't acknowledge. Obesity isn't the thing we need to be looking at. You need to be paying attention to the insulin resistance in these people. Because diabetes, heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, PCOS, I could go down the list of diseases that are all the exact same disease. And this is something I want to hammer early and often, and I have been hammering early and often all throughout my work for several years now. We have a disease of insulin resistance. Its manifestation is type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancer, PCOS, Alzheimer's, obesity. And until we deal with the underlying disease, which is insulin resistance, you're never going to see any results in any of these target goals in weight and in health. You're just not. So let's stop pretending like we need to have only 30 million people have diabetes, and so that's 25% of the population, and that's our goal. Why don't we figure out why people are getting diabetes to begin with? Why don't we figure out why heart disease and diabetes are so closely related? When you have type 2 diabetes, you have a high prevalence and likelihood that you're going to have a heart attack or some other cardiovascular event. And it's because it's the same friggin' disease. A disease of insulin resistance. That's what they're missing here. They're not putting the pieces of the puzzle together. A high BMI has been linked to 217 million cases of diabetes, 307 million cases of high blood pressure, hypertension, 11.7 million cases of cardiovascular disease, and almost 500,000 cases of certain cancers needing much more extensive and costly interventions. No. Let's not pretend like it's the BMI that's causing all those things. It's not. People want to blame obesity for all of these diseases happening when it's not obesity at all. Obesity is your body's mechanism for trying to keep you healthy in the midst of all this chaos with disease taking place because you never addressed the underlying insulin resistance. And how do you deal with that insulin resistance? You treat your body in such a way that you don't stoke insulin. Hyperinsulinemia is the great unspoken in why we have obesity and disease at record all-time highs. And until we get a hold of insulin and bring it under control, it's never going to happen. And we need to come to terms with that. That's the solution. Put the focus on the right thing, and people can make the changes that need to take place to get them healthy. Why is this hard? Why are we proverbially beating our head against the wall with this message that I've been banging for 15 years, and we're still stuck in a rut wondering why we're not meeting target goals when it comes to obesity and disease? Obesity also has staggering financial and social impacts, as well as impacting future generations. It's been estimated the total cost of having a high BMI to health services globally, $990 billion a year, the highest cost in Eastern Mediterranean and America. In OECD countries, obesity is estimated to cost 3.3% of their total GDP, with the highest cost in Mexico, which is 5.3% of their gross domestic product. Brazil is 5%. Furthermore, obesity has significant impact on employment, education, mental well-being, exacerbated by the stigma and misunderstanding around obesity. There's the other thing. Society judges those people who still have weight on their body. I know people right here on YouTube. I know you guys are watching it live on Instagram Live, but when it goes on replay, it goes on YouTube. And I've had people very openly say, "What's a fat guy talking about diet and health for? He needs to get his life under control." I see you out there. I know what you're doing there. Let's not pretend like that society doesn't judge you. Let's stop pretending like that this stigma that is associated with obesity and being fat and the related diseases that come from that Let's stop pretending like that in and of itself isn't a hard thing. To which, if it's affecting people's mental health, if it's affecting people not just physically, but in how they're living their life and the quality of said life, why aren't we looking for real solutions? Why aren't we addressing the hyperinsulinemia? It's why I'm doing this Jimmy Rants today. I'm hoping that we put this on the radar screen of those people who are in charge of trying to figure out how we stem this obesity crisis. It's not rocket science, people. I think it's pretty elementary. And I think we have to start taking this more seriously and stop doing things the old way, thinking something's going to change. We found the old way ain't working. So it's time for a new kid on the block to come in and save the day. When it comes to a disease like obesity, there is more complexity than meets the eye. Yeah, no kidding. Many people, including healthcare professionals, policymakers, and others, are guilty of seeing it as a simple lack of personal responsibility. I love that they're saying we need to stop blaming the patient for having weight on their body, because that's the way they've always treated it. You know, if you're one of those people who've had weight on your body, you know the judgmental look you get from your doctor. What's amazing to me, before I had to fire my doctor because he refused to run my insulin, a couple of years ago I fired him. I've been with him for 20 years. And when I first started going to see him, he was a relatively lean man, probably in his late 40s at the time. Now he's in his late 60s, 20 years later, and dude boy's got a gut. And it's a big gut compared to what he used to. He used to be very slender. Now he's got a gut. And he's the same guy that said, cut your fat, cut your calories, exercise, because that's the magical answer to all your obesity woes. Isn't it ironic that the very people giving us the advice to help us with our obesity actually become obese themselves? And that should get you to ask the question, why? Don't they know all the answers? Haven't they figured it out? If they know the answer, why wouldn't they just do that and solve their obesity and show us all as patients how to do it? Hypocrisy abounds, doesn't it? Like all chronic disease, the root cause of obesity runs much deeper. Yeah. All right, here's what they think the causes are. Genetic. Okay, there's probably some genetic factors, but I think genetic and obesity, I think we put too much emphasis on the gene aspect and not the epigenetic. So if you don't know that word epigenetic, it's the expression of the gene in you based on outside influences like your diet, your lifestyle, and different things. You can express those genes in different ways, and that's what epigenetics is all about. Definitely a fascinating subject if you've never looked into it. But let's stop blaming obesity on genetics. Well, my mom, my dad, and my brother and sister were all fat, so I guess I was destined to be fat. And I suppose there's some little element of that. But think about it. What else do you share besides genes? You share culture. You share socioeconomic conditions. You share the same food, which might not be great for you. So let's not be quick to just judge genes as the reason why you're obese. Psychological, I've been talking about this with the childhood trauma. But even beyond that kind of stuff, we've got work stress, family stress, just stresses in our life. And so the moment we think our psychological issues don't impact our weight, they do, you guys. Which is why I think most people need to be in therapy and dealing with some of those things that have happened in their life. There's no shame with that. Get it out, move on with your life, and be healthy and get rid of that weight that's holding you down. I'm in the midst of letting go of a lot of childhood trauma stuff in my life right now. And I know from doing that and dealing with that and talking to people about that and now openly sharing about it that I'm going to see my body respond in kind, dealing with some of those issues. Sociocultural, economic, and environmental. All of these things play a role. And the moment we deny that they have just as much a role in obesity as the food you're putting in your mouth, This is the moment we can actually get serious about this issue and find out why the tide of obesity rates is not turning in the other direction. It's actually getting higher. Organizations around the world are today calling for this cycle of shame and blame to be broken and to reevaluate our approach for addressing this complex chronic disease affecting over 650 million adults and more than 125 million children worldwide. Okay, it's nice to say you want to break the cycle. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to take away the stereotypes that fat people are just lazy and lack willpower? That's the notion we have today. So how do you break the stigma? You ain't gonna, because it's a stereotype that's gonna stick. Just like I have a southern accent, people think if you talk like this that you're stupid. Yeah, try telling me I'm stupid. I will run intellectual circles around most people that are fooled into thinking that I'm stupid because I talk funny. Southern. Just as people who are fat are not stupid. Some of the most intellectual people I know have weight on their body. And those people can think. Those people have value to offer the world. And the moment we devalue what they're bringing to the table is the moment that it becomes a shame. Are we supposed to just shove out any voices of people that we think don't have something to contribute simply by how they look? Come on. We are better than that. Professor Donna Ryan, president of the World Obesity Federation, said, despite government commitments, not a single country is on track to meet the World Health Organization goals for obesity. There is no excuse for this inaction. What did they think was going to happen? Because you know what happened when these goals were set in place. Oh, that's down the road. We got plenty of time. There will be some diet trend that'll come along and everything will be fine. And so they kicked the can down the road. And they never got to the root of it. And now that it's 5 years out to meeting these goals, now they're going to say, oh, you got to cut your calories, you got to cut your fat. And we're stuck in the same stupid, failed advice we've always been in. How is that innovating? So if it is inaction, it's inaction because they don't know what the solution is. And I'm offering it here today. Give people choices. Tell them that there's more than just their diet involved. Give people help in these areas. Outline it. Make it positive. The thing that really gets me the most is so many of you have embraced a real food, paleo, keto, carnivore type of lifestyle, Whole30, and you've been discouraged from it because of unfounded concerns. And that's the part of this story that they're not talking about either. If we gave people support for what they choose to try in order to lose weight and to get healthy, how much closer would we be to stemming this obesity epidemic to the levels they want us to? Can you imagine if there was like national policy to give a positiveness on a variety of ways to eat? And they say, look, here's the benefits. Here's the pros and cons of this. Here's the benefits of this and this and this and this. And you give people all of those things in a positive light rather than saying, this is the policy, this is how you lose weight, this is how you get healthy, all those other things, fad diets, stay away from fad diets, just do this. And they wonder why we're stuck in a rut. They wonder why we never get beyond talking about obesity in one way and things never change. If this was a business, the way this has all gone down, that business would have gone bankrupt years ago. Let's be honest about that. Continuing to do the same business strategy and losing customers, you would go out of business. And yet they're trying to keep afloat this business that should have gone out of business a long time ago. In other words, we should have shifted strategies and moved on to the next thing. They never did that. People with obesity require respectful and equitable access to treatment or opportunities for prevention. I don't think it's access. I think it's education. And the moment we stop educating people on what they can do and in a positive manner, and that includes keto, that includes paleo, that includes real food, that includes all of these modalities. Let's just stop invalidating people trying to do something for their health. That's what gets me the most. The emails I receive from people, and I get a bunch of them still, the most common one that breaks my heart the most is someone wants to try keto. They get enthusiastic about it because they've read my book, Keto Clarity, or they've seen people inspiring online, they've seen weight loss transformations, and they're like, I want that. They go to their doctor, yeah, I found out about this keto thing. I'm so excited. Oh my gosh, I can eat bacon and eggs and steak. And the doctor goes, you don't want to do that. Oh my God, that's the, And we wonder why obesity stays high. This isn't hard. This is elementary. We've got to stop discouraging people that want to make any change. And even if it ultimately ends up being the wrong change for them in that moment, we need to be encouraging people to get out of the crappy carb system. I did a Jimmy Rants a few days ago that did a survey of people of what diets they're doing. And all of the diets that were mentioned, half or more of the participants found them highly unappealing. And the reason they do that, they're not willing to make a change because they know, or they've been discouraged by a doctor from making any change other than the standard American diet that they don't want to do anymore. And so we've got to give people support. Can you imagine those half of the people that find any diet highly unappealing? If we suddenly made the things that they thought were unappealing, appealing by showing the pros and cons and being honest about it and getting support from doctors, dietitians, and government and all these entities that could have a direct influence on what you choose to do, that's how we would change this obesity epidemic. Let's stop pretending like the answer isn't there staring us in the face. It's been there all along. They've just been stuck, dug in their heels on a one-size-fits-all diet. One-size-fits-all very rarely fits all, right? This requires action from policymakers around the world to address the underlying roots of obesity. What's a policymaker going to do? So do you think Congress and the Senate and the President and all the people in the government have the answer to getting to the root cause of obesity? No. Do you think the mainstream medical profession, which most of those people haven't even had 2 weeks of nutrition, most of them far less than that, in their medical training, when it comes to dealing with people and giving them diet advice, do we need to rely on them? No. All right, what about nutritionists? Oh, surely nutritionists and dietitians who were traditionally trained, but oh yeah, by the way, their training vilifies fat. Talks about eating low calorie. Do we need to rely on them to help us address the underlying root causes of obesity? I don't think any of those groups apply. You know who gets to the root causes? It's functional medicine practitioners. So, functional medicine doctors, functional medicine nutritionists, go look them up, guys. There's a great kind of integrative nutrition that's out there. All of these, they always look to the root causes. I host a podcast on Thursdays called Real Talk with Jimmy Moore and Dr. Will Cole. And Dr. Cole, Will is a good friend of mine, and he's been practicing functional medicine for a little while. And he never just treats a symptom. When he sees a symptom in a patient, he almost invariably goes, why is that symptom there? And what do we do about it? And he runs a whole lot of labs. That's the kind of attention we need to get to the root cause of obesity. Let's don't put it in the hands of policymakers on Capitol Hill here in America. Let's don't put it in the hands of doctors and dietitians. It needs to be in the hands of people that are actually already looking at the root cause, right? A lot of you are also nutritional therapy practitioners. You're kind of along that same lines where you're looking at root causes of why disease is taking place. That's what we need. That's how we stem the tide and create action. But the thing is, they don't want to get out of their paradigm of how they do things now. It's very comfortable to stay where we are. But comfort doesn't equate to success. And if we're really real about wanting to stem this tide of obesity, we will stop pretending like there's no problem when there's a very clear problem. To mark the first Unified World Obesity Day, a declaration was drawn up by obesity groups to highlight the 5 areas, the routes in which action must be taken by policymakers to achieve the targets on obesity to which they've committed. Signatories to the declaration are some of the world's largest obesity organizations, and the declaration is now open for individual supporters to add their voices to this urgent call for a comprehensive and effective government response to obesity in their own countries. You can sign all the things in the world, but if you're an obesity organization and you're not doing the things that I just outlined in this Jimmy Rants here today, you have failed. A lot of these obesity organizations, they are the part of the problem. It's just like the American Diabetes Association. Everybody pretends like they have the very best interests of the person with diabetes in mind. They do not. They only want to pretend like they are a diabetes advocacy group. These, at the American Heart Association, these obesity organizations want to pretend like they are the purveyors of all the knowledge of how we deal with obesity. And the reality is, with the AHA and all these obesity organizations, they are only in it for the public interests that are funding them. So let's stop pretending like they have all the answers. It just gets me how people fall for this again and again and again. And these organizations get away with thinking, oh, we'll just keep doing things the same way. Oh, yeah, obesity's getting worse. I'm the obesity organization. Kind of like the American Diabetes Association. They have to see the obesity or the diabetes rates getting worse. Oh, okay, getting worse. But we're going to keep giving the same advice. And nothing gets better. You should be ashamed if you give money to any of these obesity organizations or the American Diabetes Association. And don't get me started on the American Heart Association. Definitely not in the business of trying to educate and stem heart disease. Let's make that clear. They're not. According to Johanna Ralston, the Chief Executive Officer of the World Obesity Federation, she says the absence of a comprehensive view of obesity has translated into fragmented health systems, weak policies, and a poor translation of medical knowledge into widely available prevention and care. Obesity does not occur in silos. It will not be solved in them either. That's why we're launching a declaration on obesity, calling on all governments and policymakers to join civil society organizations all around the world to support greater collective action and further awareness about this serious chronic disease. Well, that's all well and good. You can declare all you want, and you can urge government to get involved and change policies to make obesity rates go down. But guys, it ain't going to happen. The only way people actually become successful is to get out of that educational morass. Stop listening to their doctors. Stop listening to dietitians and nutritionists that are old school related. And you go online, you find people like me, you find people that you relate with, you read books, you read all kinds of things online, and you watch videos, and you go, that sounds like something I could do. And then you do it, and your weight and your health get radically better, and it's outside the system. The problem is so many people like to trust that system that they constantly and chronically stay in the system and never think, oh yeah, I don't need the system. I can find the information I need independent from that system. And that's where we are. So any stemming of the obesity rates now is those of us that have gone outside the system. But even some of us still outside the system still have weight on our body. And we're dealing with all those things. And we're trying to get to the root causes of what that is about. Sometimes it's more than food. So let's stop pretending like obesity is just a food thing. And let's stop pretending like we don't know why obesity rates keep getting worse. It's plain and simple, you guys. Insulin, hormones, environmental factors, trauma. These all play a role. And we need to stop denying the role that they play. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. Sorry that one went long today, but there was a whole lot to say on this particular one. So as always, by the way, go to jimmyrants.com if you want to see past episodes. And then YouTube also has it. So thank you to everybody watching on whatever format you're doing. And if you're live or you're on replay. Sounds more like a dream than a goal, says Mariposa. Yeah, talking about the rates of obesity that they want to hit. I'm sure they were pretty bold in those predictions of what they wanted to happen. And they really thought, oh, all these countries will see this as a serious health epidemic and they want to stem the tide. But then, no, didn't happen. Yes, Navneet says there's no unity at all on this topic. There's just too many opinions. And that's the problem. I don't mind that there's a multiplicity of opinions because I think multiple opinions is part of the solution. We don't need to be stuck in a one-size-fits-all. That's what we've done since the 1980s when the Dietary Guidelines for Americans came out. We've been stuck with a one-size-fits-all solution. Let's offer multiple ones, but then let's all make them all look good so that people aren't discouraged away from one over the other. And one of them very well could work. Lulu says the stress and now all the shelves are empty of all the chemicals to fight it. No Lysol. Yeah. Disgraceful how we are treated like a plague. Exactly, Ilza. It's crazy. Crazy. Sorry, I loved rice cakes. Lulu, did you really like the rice cakes or did you fool yourself into believing that? Ilza says obesity is just a symptom of the things going very wrong in your body. That's exactly what it is. And I think we don't pay attention to that. Jesse, hey, how are you? I'm lucky to have a doctor who gets it. Dr. Nally posted a good article, 10 strategies to maintain your weight loss. Yeah. Dr. Siwis also has a lot of really great material. Common sense isn't always as common as you think. Exactly. Well, and most of the, quote, common sense that we have isn't right, and it isn't helping people. Sucralose does it to me, says Lena, and then I crash, talking about raising your insulin. Kat says, if we only look at adult population, this game is totally lost. Just found pre-K for my youngest that doesn't allow fruit juice or candy. The emphasis is on protein at every meal and snack. Sounds like you don't need to lose that. It's going to take good care of your kid. Everything starts with the kids. From what I see, 95% of them eat pure crap, void of nutrients. Our future does not look bright from this side of things. From your perspective, I'm sure that's true. Let's see. Anybody else? Work stress is such a menace, says Bright Blur. Yeah. And you got to figure out ways to deal with that, or it becomes this problem that just never goes away. 25 Down and More says the UK government have just asked people to provide the studies for them to assess low carb as a treatment for type 2 diabetes. Let's hope they listen. That's great. If they're actually putting out, hey, we want to see the research, I hope all my friends in Great Britain and in Europe actually send it to them because we need that. The American Diabetes Association's brand new CEO is type 2 diabetic, managing it with keto, says Life in Pix 50. That's great, but will it become the policy? I think every type 2 diabetic definitely needs carbohydrate restricts. The severity of which they need to restrict will depend on how severe their type 2 diabetes is. And so, but definitely a low carb diet is necessary for people with diabetes. Really liked, must have been all the maltodextrin. Lulu talking about the rice cakes. Yeah, they were usually flavored. So they had like blueberry flavored. I didn't want to know what was in the flavoring. Carnivore Amy, hey, how are you? Everyone is struggling. We're working office jobs, no sunlight, crappy, cheap food. We're all taught the wrong things. Amy, you nailed it. I mean, that's exactly what's going on here. And until we address that, we can't really move forward. All right, guys, I got a little bit of time left. I actually have a podcast I need to get to in about 5 minutes, so I need to hurriedly get through the rest of this Jimmy Rants. Let's see what my Facebookers have to say. Anything here, you guys? Bunch of people saying hello, so no. So guys, the bottom line here, we don't have an obesity crisis that keeps getting worse and worse. We don't have a chronic disease crisis that keeps getting worse and worse. We have an ignorance of the root cause of the problem. And that root cause is high insulin. And until we address the high insulin, you're never going to see results. And I think if you don't know what your fasting insulin level is today, you need to find out. Because high insulin is the only reason you have obesity. Primary reason, I should say. And you need to figure out why your insulin's high. Is it what you're eating? Is it something in your life? Is there something going on keeping it high? And once obesity organizations recognize this, it's a game changer. Everything about what you believed about your fatness and your sickness on your body will change forever. All right, guys, that's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. As always, go to jimmyrants.com. You can also go over to YouTube, type in the keyword Jimmy Rants. You'll find the show. You can see all the past episodes there, you guys. We are coming back a little bit later on today with another Jimmy Rants at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Not sure what I'm going to talk about just yet, but we will have a great one. Hope you enjoyed today's show. And until next time, we'll see you then. All right, guys.